Well, thank you for joining me on the Wise Practice podcast. Today is a different kind of episode if you're watching this, on your YouTube, but then you're seeing that I'm actually not in my recording studio, which is really just my office today. I am in my bedroom. So this is the second time I've recorded a podcast from my bedroom, and it's going to be awesome. And I'm really excited. I've actually had to reschedule this podcast interview multiple times, unfortunately, because life is crazy, y'all. You all know it. So I am getting over the flu still. I've been sick for over a week. My guest, Susan, has been so gracious and kind to reschedule multiple times with me, but it's also pouring down rain and there's like a tornado warning going on. But this episode is so important to me that I was like, I've got to make this happen. Y'all know things in your practice and in your life that you just know it's important. You feel it in your gut, you're excited about it. So I'm really thrilled about this particular episode today. And as you know, we've been doing a series of Wise Practice community members and people that are doing really cool things in their practice. So I encourage you, if you missed those episodes earlier in the month of March, to go back and listen to those. I had someone come talk about getting rate increase letters with insurance companies. We also talked about niching down in your practice, and we talked about multiple locations. And today we're going to be diving into how we can care well for the vulnerable and weak in our populations and communities. But when we hear that, I know it's kind of like, oh, how do I do that in a way that's sustainable for me and for the people I hire? And so we're going to be jumping into that today. So I'm excited to welcome Susan Doak to the show. Susan, how are you today?
I am so excited to be here, Whitney. This is like really fun, and I'm glad we're pushing through. You're just so willing to like make this happen. So, yes, thanks so much for having me, Whitney.
Yay. Well, wonderful. Before we jump in and talk about your practice, I'm going to read your bio here. Susan is a licensed professional counselor, clinical supervisor, and group practice owner at Newburgh Counseling and Wellness in Newburgh, Oregon. She and her team provide compassionate counseling services with a mission to empower our local community with the skills and courage to handle the challenges of life. I love it. So, Susan, do you know? Well, first of all, I've known you for a while.
Mhm.
We go way back.
Yeah.
But there was a moment where you really stood out to me for your compassion. I mean, yes, I see that a lot. But after one of the summits, it might have been 2 or 3 summits ago, you left a gift for me. And I can't say that members attend the summit very often and leave gifts, but I didn't know about it till I got home and I was unloading all the supplies. And this gift, gosh, I feel emotional talking about it. This gift comes out and it's tea and a card about just the gift of caring for yourself and what I had done to put the summit on. So you had the forethought before you got to Charlotte, I believe it was the Charlotte one, and had a gift ready. And there was so much kindness and love. And I already knew who you were, but there was something about that moment that who you were really shined in the way that you care for people.
Oh,
Yeah.
I'm glad that was meaningful for you, Whitney. And it just takes a lot to do that summit, doesn't it? And I just like
It
had this in my imagination. I just thought of, okay, at some point, all of that prep and hard work is going to be over, and I hope Whitney just gets to sit down, just make a cup of tea, and just sit down and just stare out the window and have some calm downtime when you're not running around solving all kinds of problems. And I hope you got
well,
to have that moment.
I did. I did. So thank you for that. Well, let's talk about you though. Tell us kind of how you became a therapist and got into the work and started your group practice.
Yes, so I have been a therapist for over 21 years now, and I live in Newburgh, Oregon now, and I started a group practice in 2018. And the reason I started the group practice is that I had this moment of realization where I realized that I was taking my resource as a clinician, and I was going towards the population center for us is Portland, Oregon. So I was, going towards Portland and going to work out there, commuting to work, and but I actually live about 25 miles outside of Portland in a more rural community and an agriculture community. And I really came to this realization that my community actually needs my resource. And so I decided to start a practice, and then I had so many referrals coming in because there was so much need that I started a group practice really about 7 months later or 8 months later. So it happened pretty quickly. And my goal was to bring some of the resource, even counselors from Portland, to actually kind of pull some resource out towards my people to give them more opportunity to have counseling in a place close to where they live, and to work with providers who understand them. And that's been a fun journey. And part of that has meant working with local Medicaid provider, working with our coordinated care organization just locally in our county, and getting to know people out here.
Yeah. Now, in your area, are there many group practices or access to services, or is it harder to find?
It's becoming easier. I think so much changed after COVID with telehealth services. And I think also there's just kind of an expansion of the urban area that is moving out this direction. And there's more counseling services here than there ever
Mm.
has been. Although I actually think that we were a part of that growth. I think we were a part of setting that trend. And really still, there's still a need. So when I see new providers coming to our area, I'm not like, oh no, more competition. My thought is, oh great, like we actually have so much need that we would love to have more of us, and we would love to talk to each other and work together and provide something better for people out here.
Yeah. So when did you go from being a solo practice owner to a group practice owner?
2018. And I went from just me to then hired 3 therapists kind of at the same time.
Wow.
And
Okay.
we just we just kind of went for it. I'm partly an insurance-based practice, or you could even say that I am an insurance-based practice. We also have private pay folks as well. And then we see people who are on commercial insurances, as well as people who are on Medicaid for our area of Oregon. And so there's kind of a balance there of different kinds of people coming in the door.
Yeah. So I think a lot of therapists get a little fearful when they hear Medicaid, right? They're worried of, well, I make enough money, and will they show up for treatment, and how can I bill for this? Or even the cancellation policy. I know can be a challenge where if someone doesn't know this already, with Medicaid, a lot of states you can't bill when they don't show up for a session, when those
Yeah.
clients will show up. So it makes it challenging. So could you talk a little bit about how did you make the decision to get on Medicaid, and how have you been able to make it sustainable for your practice?
Sure. So I love my Medicaid clients. And I guess, the thing that kind of led me in that direction is that since the very beginning of my career, I've always worked with Medicaid clients in some capacity. And they've always been my favorite. And I think that might just be because I also do a lot of work with complex trauma. And
Hmm.
I've always enjoyed also just being a little bit closer to people who are marginalized. So I have it kind of challenges my faith to kind of get a little bit closer. I think sometimes in our socioeconomic status, we're business owners, we can have a lot of separation from people who are truly vulnerable in this world.
Mm.
And so especially having Medicaid as a part of my practice has meant that we're closer. So we are so much closer to people who are on the margins. And so when, you hear in the news like, well, there's this bill being passed about Medicaid, or this is happening, they're real people and real faces that we see in our minds of people that we
Mhm.
know. And that's been interesting. I think the other, as you were saying, Whitney, there is a misconception out there that you cannot make any money as a practice owner and take Medicaid. So I think there is a little bit of a misconception out there that Medicaid doesn't pay well. In some states, it actually pays rather well. It really depends on the state that you're in. And the good thing about Medicaid rates in your state is that you can actually look them up. Unlike commercial insurance rates, they hide those from us. They actually publish a Medicaid rate, so you can just go right into AI and say, in your state, what's the reimbursement rate? And you can even put your CPT codes in there and find that out. So that is published. The same is true for Medicare rates too. I don't take Medicare, but I think that but like you were saying, there is some differences in what we're allowed to do and not allowed to do. So, for example, we are not allowed to charge a cancellation fee. So if someone cancels last minute, we are not allowed to charge them a fee to try to make up for that lost income. So there are a few things like that, as well as some rules around making sure we're providing timely access, so timely access to care, and that we know we can get clients in a certain amount of time, that we can attend to our clients who are in crisis quickly. That's also one of the expectations that we have as well as with commercial insurance. So it's in that way, it's really not all that different as well. Yeah.
Mm. As I'm listening and reflecting, I'm thinking about the challenges. You said, I love my Medicaid clients. I love complex trauma. And I was like, oh, complex trauma. Like I love it, but I can't do it for more than one. Or, talked about being a business owner. I was even just thinking, it's like as I grow as a business owner, and even as I do consulting with practice owners, I'm totally being vulnerable and just saying the stuff here, but it's like
Yeah.
we encourage practice owners actually to see the clients that pay the most, see the clients that are the easiest because you're running your practice. And I think there's something to be said for that. But then I'm listening to you and I'm thinking, it's almost like we're getting away from the heart of what we're doing,
Mm.
right? At the same
Mm.
time, like how do we stay in that place of sweetness and vulnerability to our clients and to the world and its
Mm.
pain while we're also running a practice that's sustainable?
And I really do think that part of the sustainability matrix is also that we're doing something that's really values aligned. Like that is
Mm-hmm.
really actually aligned with our values. And I think that's where it really like ties into the faith piece for me. Like when, when we look through the Bible, and there are so many passages about taking care of the poor, the widow, the orphan, the foreigner. That's those four that I just mentioned. They might call that in theological circles the quartet of the vulnerable. And so like these people are mentioned over and over again. And we are as Christ followers, even just mandated repeatedly in the Bible to serve these people. And I think, we can decide to if that's something that we need to do in our private practice, or if we're doing that in our personal lives, or in some other capacity. It doesn't have to be something that your practice is doing. But I do think that there is a place for us to really listen to God about like, who are you calling me to? And that's been, I think, a challenge for me to also know that it is often hard work or difficult work, but it's so meaningful that it gets offset. So like whatever we see as being like some of the cost is offset. So I also offset by meaning, but I also think that there's something to doing what I call kind of diversifying your insurance portfolio, or we just say diversifying your income portfolio. So if you as a practice owner want to see Medicaid clients, I don't necessarily recommend you building your entire practice on them. And here's why. It's because we live in a tumultuous time, right? Our government's kind of doing all kinds of crazy stuff. There's a lot of uncertainty around funding. And so I don't necessarily recommend that. I actually don't recommend you build your practice on any one insurance. Don't do it with Blue Cross Blue Shields. Don't do it. Just, diversify. And the reason
Mm-hmm.
for that is that you're going to have all these various situations where you need certain things to offset one another. So for example, I know that I might sometimes lose some money over here with serving Medicaid clients with just cancellations. I have another insurance that I work for over here where I get a really high reimbursement rate. And so I can kind of work with both of those together. The high one over here kind of offsets some of my costs over here.
Yeah.
And so that's one of the things that we do and even have done as we've heard just new information coming out about Medicaid changes in 2027 that are coming, that we said, let's just add another couple of commercial insurances to just kind of broaden our scope and make sure we have a lot of diversity in the types of income that are coming in, the payers,
Mm-hmm.
and how they work. So that's kind of how we offset that a little bit. And it, and Medicaid is, the other thing that I think is interesting is that I have Medicaid clients come to me all the time and they say, this is so special to me. This is so special because the alternative for me is going to my county, like my county office, where I might get to be seen once a month
Yep.
from someone who has a caseload of 100 clients. And you see me every week, you make me a cup of tea, and we actually, and I'm in a homey environment. And I have so many of them come back to us and just say, this actually means so, so much to us to be treated in this way. So, so that's always just really stuck with me.
It's beautiful. Yeah. And I love the point you're making that it's about your alignment with your values. Where's the energy coming from for the work you do? Like God sustains that within us. I think that when we talk about energy, we're talking about where's the Holy Spirit moving,
Yeah. Yeah.
and it's figuring out how do I serve these people in whatever context I'm in, and even though like I'm a very different practice in a very different area, private pay, but like I also offer sliding scale, or we have some pro bono, or we are able to do fundraising events and provide finances for people that are in need. And so it's all in how you can feel called to that within your model. And they're all going to
Yeah.
look so different.
They are going to look different, and it's going to look different depending on your location too.
Yeah.
I know, Whitney, you're more based in the city, and I'm kind of based out in the country. And, and it's just also depends on what are the other resources around you in that area. So so I was just looking up some stats about Medicaid specifically, and 24% of rural America is on Medicaid. And then close to 50% of kids in rural America, so this is all over the US, are actually on Medicaid. So I was just really surprised by that. And there's been so much, I think there's just been a little bit more attention like paid to like where, state and federal funds are going. And Medicaid is actually a mix of both. It's a mix of both state and federal funds that go to that. But that is 50% of kids. That's a lot of kids.
Mm-hmm.
And also the other piece to that is 34% of people who are on Medicaid are also disabled. And so having the ability in our private practice to do more work with people who are disabled, and to also adjust our practice to make that possible, to adjust our practice also to make it possible to work with people who don't speak English, or who speak English as a second language or a third or a fifth language because they speak a lot of languages. Just making some of those even just adjustments around access to care for people around language has been super interesting. Medicaid in our state also has some funding for doing counseling with interpreter services. So I have done family therapy with interpreters. And so we have done it with, I've done it with Spanish, Japanese, American Sign Language, Cantonese, over the years. And I have loved it. And you basically realized that just how much good work actually can be done. Can you imagine family therapy? And there's also an interpreter in the room, but how much good work can really be done in those types of situations. So it challenges us in some different ways.
Love it. I think you were in the same talk at the summit about Spanish speaking clients. Were you in there?
I was, yes.
Okay.
Luis.
Okay. And unfortunately there should have been more of us in there.
Yeah.
But we were chatting about it, and I was sitting there like, I remember saying, we don't have any Spanish speaking clients at my practice. And I was embarrassed. I don't know if you remember. I was like, oh my gosh, like what can we do? Susan, a month later, we hired a girl that's Spanish speaking. And at the time, she was like, am I going to be able to see Spanish speaking clients? I was like, I'm so sorry. We don't get any of those. I hope it works out, but we don't.
Oh,
Immediately, they started flooding in. It's like the gates
wonderful.
opened as soon as God was like, here you go. And this girl loves the Lord. She is so passionate. Anyway, we had to like redo all of our paperwork. What you're saying, it's like we had to make
Yes,
accommodations to be a Spanish speaking practice overnight. And
good for
yeah, now
you.
she's got like 7 or 8 clients. I was like, this is so cool.
It is.
Yeah.
And I think like though that means a lot to those clients that you would make
Oh
those
yeah.
accommodations too. And also just a fun thing to know about, especially about Medicaid with bilingual therapists, is if you have a therapist who speaks another language and they take Medicaid, there's also often an increase in the insurance reimbursement that you would get or that you could get. So you can do a modifier add-on that
Oh,
might mean
yeah.
that that clinician or that your practice gets about 20 to 40 more dollars per session
That's
because they're
great.
doing that session in another language. And they have that clinician also has that specific skill set to do bilingual therapy. And so like how cool and exciting that is that that's actually pretty fast came
Yeah.
around that you just added that to your practice. That's
Yeah,
really
so
great,
cool.
Whitney.
Yeah. Tell us a little bit about sustainability. So, how do you have a practice that's sustainable and seeing so many Medicaid clients? I know you talked a little bit about the financial part, and if there's more to say about that, I want to hear about it, but also just the emotional, the burnout that therapists experience, especially group practice owners keeping therapists in their practice. You're working with a
Mhm.
tough population. Like, how do
Yeah.
you create that sustainability?
Yeah, I'm glad you asked that question. So I really care a lot about how much space our clinicians have to be able to do some self-care and consult with one another around really difficult cases. And so I think it's important sometimes to even build in some space and time, or at least have a culture where there's some buffer that we are not always just running, that we are also taking some time to slow down and reflect, or insisting that we have vacations. Like we take vacations, we take time away from all of that complex trauma and all of those heavier caseloads to really nourish ourselves as well as get training. So I have some clinicians who are really involved right now in getting training in EMDR, internal family systems, and just are getting the training that they feel like they need so they can feel confident when they approach some of those more difficult cases. But also that just remembering that we're a part of this larger system. So I have a personal relationship with our county leadership in Medicaid, and I actually know of all of our resources in our area. And so like there's this bigger system of actually really caring people that we're just like we're a piece of that. And we're not an island, we're not the only one. There are so many of us who are doing that work together. So I think like just having this knowledge and knowing that this is a system of care around people. Sometimes it's a
Mhm.
whole treatment team. So I always say for people that have a really difficult or complex case, like I say to those clinicians, you don't want to be a one-person treatment team. It sounds like that client actually might need a medication provider also. Or
Mm.
maybe this kid, we need to involve their school counselor, or we need to make sure their grandma's involved.
Yeah.
There are just other that we're not the only people who are sort of holding responsibility, liability, or even just making clinical recommendations for a
Mhm.
case if there are maybe more than one set of eyes on that case. So
Yeah.
those are just some ways that we try to build that in to make it a little bit more sustainable for people. I have also found that it changes my hiring. So I hire clinicians who want to work with a variety of clients. They enjoy working with people on private insurance, maybe people who can pay out of pocket. In our area, they all live up on the mountain. There's a mountain, and everybody who can pay out of pocket lives up on the mountain. And I love the idea of mixing people in my waiting room. So people
Mhm.
maybe who are super high income can come and sit in the waiting room next to a kid in foster care. And I think that's absolutely wonderful. I love that. But our clinicians are often attracted to our practice because we want to actually serve a vulnerable population as well as others. So it has actually been helpful to me in my hiring. Most of my clinicians have, even especially recently, they just kind of come to me. I don't tend to do a lot of outward looking for clinicians on Indeed. They kind of have heard about a practice and they say, I actually also really want to work with these populations. Do you have a spot open? um,
Mhm.
and so it's been a way of actually attracting and retaining clinicians who are values aligned with us, who
Yeah.
really care about what we care about. So in that way, it has actually been, I've been able to build a stronger practice financially because of that stability that we've been able to maintain. Yeah.
Now, do you overtly talk about being a faith-based practice?
I do not. Yeah.
Okay.
So, and I do hire clinicians who are not coming from that background. However, I think the values piece is really important. So that's when we kind of come back to what those values are. And people are able to, I have found that that has actually worked out pretty well. And I think it makes a difference in the cohesion of the group when we're all, we're all working around the same values. We care about the vulnerable people. And we also care a lot about integrity. Just I've noticed that, or especially around money, we as clinicians can just get really, really uncomfortable. But the integrity piece with how we bill insurance, what we count and what we don't count, the
Mm.
things that are covered, that actually really matters. That we're not calling something that it isn't. We're not billing things that are actually insurance fraud, and that we're just being honest. That part's really important too. Mhm.
Mm-hmm. Totally agree. Yeah, I had a realization sometime last year just about values over faith alignment. I used to just really look for, does this person say they're a Christian? Do they attend church? What does that look like, And then finally I was like, it's not about that. It's about our values. And these
Mhm.
values are of Christ. I mean, your values of
Yeah.
caring for the vulnerable and integrity, these are Christ-centered values. And so instead of saying the words, let's actually do them, you know?
Yeah.
And that's what you're living out there through your practice. And oh,
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah.
Susan, what's next for your practice? What big dreams do you have?
What is next? We are just trying to do a service to our community right now. We're offering a free group about nervous system regulation. So
I
our,
saw that.
our community's been through a lot and in a lot of different ways. Some of that is political, some of that is just some crisis situations that our community has gone through. And so that's something that we're doing. We are I'm a part of a group called Counselors Connect. So we are a group of about 80 counselors in our area who we just get together and support one another. So we
Hmm.
have it's a networking group where we do self-care activities together. We have done painting and yoga. We also do trainings. And so that's also been something where we've seen a lot of really fun movement where we can refer to each other and we can find just like supports in the community for our clients.
That's
So
great.
a lot of good stuff going on there. Mhm.
Oh, I love it. Well, Susan, you are a part of the Wise Practice membership community.
I
So
am.
could you take a minute or two and talk about what it is that you love about the community and how you find it helpful?
Absolutely. So I just got out of our accountability group just a couple of hours ago, and I have really enjoyed, especially being a part of this group where we are other practice owners in the same place in our practice, and we all have about the same number of clinicians. And we go to each other with questions, concerns, prayer needs, and just can track with people who are really in going through some of the same things. But I have found so much wisdom in this group. I often sit in the group and I'm just like, I'm writing notes the whole time because there's so many good ideas and so much wisdom to take away from just that 1 hour. But I just love the other parts of the group. I love being able to get on Circle. I put out a question even recently when I went on a vacation abroad. What do I do, to try to make sure my practice is taken care of while I'm overseas? Had some really good input about that. And then it's just the summit. I love the summit. I love going to the summit every year. I find that I get a lot of clarity and I think that there's
Mm.
so much as a practice owner kind of spinning around in your head about things you're supposed to do. But I think it's a good opportunity to just like slow down, meet some people who are also kind of in the same place, learn some really great things, but also like discern, like, what is God asking me to do? What is God asking me to do? Not everybody else.
Yeah.
And then where do I go from there? And like actually setting some goals to like follow through on what I, not only what I feel God is calling me to, but what I've already committed to. And the things that I've said are really important. So I always find that it's a good time for me to get centered. And I walk away with like, I have a notebook where I walk away and I can look in that notebook and say, like, am I doing these things? Because this is actually the path that I feel is the right path for me. So I appreciate all the work that goes into it, Whitney, and it's always just fun. It's actually really fun to meet other practice owners and laugh together, and sometimes we cry together. we we sometimes sit in a sweaty room together and learn some amazing things from someone
That's
that we
right.
didn't know. And I just always feel blessed by that time, Whitney. I really do. And
Mm.
I set aside time on my calendar every year.
Oh, I love it. I love it. And I love that you brought up the summit, even though I was asking about the membership community, because when I envision it, the
Mm,
summit is when we get to be together in person. That's like the sweet moment. And being online is beautiful too. I mean, we have some great conversations when we're meeting every week, but it is
yeah.
really special when we get to be together in person. And
Yeah.
so I'm already looking forward to October of this year and being in Nashville. So
Yes, the same,
yeah.
the same. And then when you go to the summit, if you're part of membership community, you can see some people in person that you've seen online. And those are relationships that you will carry, that will actually be, these are people that will be a part of your life. And then when you actually get to see them in person, I think it just solidifies those relationships even more, and it just makes them really meaningful.
Yeah,
Mhm.
definitely. Well, Susan, this has been a treat. I appreciate your time and your
Thank
commitment to the
you.
work that you do and sharing that with us today.
Thank you, Whitney. It's a joy to be with you.